I believed in God. I knew that, you know, Muhammad and Jesus were all great people.
Were your parents strict? I know your father was a Muslim, your mother was a Christian.
You know, their thing was, you are on your spiritual journey.
Did you realize you had gifts at what point?
When I was in first grade and I was bored and I was giving readings to the first graders in class.
Amani channel, this is Seeds of Awakening. Thanks so much for watching. You know, we're all about the free thinkers and the open-minded information for you to help you just expand your thoughts a little bit. So today I have a great guest, but make sure you like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, do all those things to help trigger the algorithm. I'm bringing our guest right now. Her name is Veronica Jackson. She's an intuitive, a tarot card reader, and a healer. Let me go ahead and bring her in now, and we'll have a great conversation for you. So welcome, Veronica. So good to see you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me.
So let's just start. Oh, you're welcome. And let's just start at your childhood. So take me to your childhood. How were you raised? Where were you raised? Were you raised in a religious household? What was your childhood like?
Oh, my childhood was very open. My mother was Christian, Baptist to be, exact, and a Sunday school teacher in her earlier days. And my dad was also Christian, Pentecostal, and then converted to Islam. So I had a mixed religious household. So that was really open. Where I was raised in Jersey City, New Jersey.
I'd hear it.
Yeah. So it was, a fun place and a sad place at the same time.
Why is that?
Well, it was a lot of industry, manufacturing at that time. We're talking 45, 50 years ago. I mean, I'm dating myself a bit, but 45, 50 years ago. And everyone that, took the bus to industry, manufacturing, those kinds of things, they just look so sad. I recollect they looked sad. It was a hardship. It was a way to earn a living, but it was still sad. They weren't living life with joy. And I knew as I observed, and I think I told my mom, I don't want to live like that. That's not a way I want to live. So she says, okay, so you need to go to school and think about what you would like to do. And whatever you would like to do, make sure you can take care of yourself on an economic and spiritual level. She was real specific about that. And so, she allowed us to explore the world the best that, we could and what they could afford at the time. My dad worked for the US government, which, I'm thankful for and grateful for. He was military and was able to do, leave the military and then just go into the government workforce.
Were you raised were your parents strict? I know your father was a Muslim, your mother was a Christian, a Baptist. Were they strict religious folks, or how were
No,
they?
no, their thing was, you are on your spiritual journey, which was rare when you think about the fundamentalists, right? On both sides, you're on your spiritual journey. What we would like is for you to find your place and what you feel comfortable with doing as far as spirituality. I believed in God. I knew that, Muhammad and Jesus were all great people, and they were there to guide people on their spiritual journey in a specific way. It may not resonate for everyone. It didn't necessarily, I respect it, but it doesn't resonate with me.
So at what point did you begin to have spiritual, did you realize you had gifts? At what point?
When I was in first grade and I was bored and I was giving readings to the first graders in class.
What was that like?
Well, the teacher wasn't happy, and she called my mom.
Do you remember doing it? You remember specifically? Okay.
I do remember. I don't remember that what I said to them.
Right.
But I do remember doing that. And then my mom said, you really can't do that. They didn't ask you for that. And what I would like, when you're finished with your work, I would like you to read books. We're going to have a little special nook for you. You go get a book and you sit down and you read it. The teacher and I have discussed that, and that's what you're going to do. You're not going to give people readings, or you're not going to tell them anything. You're a first grader. You should be learning. I was like, okay, so I didn't know that that's what was happening. And she didn't label it. She just said, you can't, they consider it disruptive. So we don't want that, you know. If you feel that someone's in imminent danger, you need to come and tell me,
Right.
you
So
know.
at what point did you get did you realize you had a gift though? I mean, you kind of probably did that intuitively, right? I mean, you're just kind of giving them
Yes.
readings 'cause you felt the urge to. How did those skills develop over the years?
Well, I think as the years passed, until I was about the age of 26, that's important. I just lived the normal life of a kid, a teenager, a kid. But I did realize I was different.
In what
I knew
way?
something was off. Well, I didn't want to do all the things that my peers were doing. That was a time when they were doing a lot of drugs. It was free love. That wasn't for me.
Okay.
I mean, they were having fun with it, but no. I went to parties to dance. I enjoyed that, but that's also spiritual too when you really think about it. So I didn't do that. And I wanted out of the traditional high school system.
Mm.
So what I did was I doubled up on classes and was able to graduate early, and then entered, university life at 16 in New York City. Just imagine a 16-year-old in New York City that was sheltered in New Jersey. I mean, although it was right across the river, I was still considered sheltered. But it did open up a whole new world of, I don't want to use the term, but multicultural education, and an appreciation for that, the food, the dance, the clothes. It was great. It was really great. Um, and I think at 18, I think that was my second year in, my mom's brothers and sisters started to cross over, and they lived in the South. They lived in North Carolina. And so, out of respect, you go to the funeral, and, you know, you meet people, and you know, things happen. And then as they started to cross over by the age of like 25, 26, you know, hanging out with my cousins because I felt safe. My cousin had a friend, Evelyn, at one of the gatherings at her house, and it was there that Evelyn let me know, you're psychic, you are intuitive, you have a lot of things to do. And of course, that was new to me. That aspect was really new to me.
What were you thinking
So
as she sort of explained that to you that you were psychic? Did you even know what that meant? Did you kind of know what she was talking about?
I did not know what she was talking about. I had to learn that. I had to learn that. So, the readings proved fruitful, that it opened up the door. The door was now wide open, and I had to walk through it, and I did. I wasn't afraid, you know. Um, so I came back to New Jersey, and at the time I was working in industry. I was working in aerospace, believe it or not.
Mhm.
Um, and I started I've talked to a friend, Rita, who also has crossed over since. She said she was waiting for me. She was gifted herself. She says, "Oh, I've been waiting for you. You're the person that I've been waiting for. So I'm here to guide you. I have lots of reading material for you to read." I was a book termite, so I got through those books pretty fast and started attending the New Jersey Metaphysical Center, of which I'm still a member. And I'm grateful to them because they provided classes and training. Cindy Bargy was my other teacher. I actually took classes because there's a whole ethical aspect, which today I don't think people know. they're like that first grader that just tells you anything, and you're not supposed to do that. You have to really I have to ask spirit. I have to go within and also ask spirit and my guides and my ancestors. They might give me the information, but it doesn't necessarily mean I'm to give it to the person that's sitting in front of me, because they're on their journey and they have their lessons. And so it may be a way that I have to phrase it. And fortunately, um, because I don't have a total narrow world view and have had experiences, I really feel from my heart that that's important if you're going to do this work,
The
because
ethical side of it.
the ethical side, the cultural side, if I, because my dad was Muslim and I learned about it, if I'm have a person that's a Muslim in front of me, there's things that I know that help me to deliver the information sensitively and with love.
Right, right.
So, and the same with the Christian. It's like, okay, um, they're going exactly by the Bible. Now, my mother was that Sunday school teacher, and I didn't learn everything I was supposed to, but there are things in the Bible that talks about people like myself. And she let me know if somebody says anything to you, tell them to go back to Corinthians. It's right there. And if I don't remember anything else, I remember that. The gift of sight, the gift of hearing, all of that's there.
Yeah. It seems like a lot of Christians don't even relate to the spiritual side of, well, the gifts that we have, though I mean, some of them do, but some of them look at demon worship, but they look at it as spiritism, when a lot of the stuff is mentioned in the Bible, actually, like you said.
Yeah, it's because, they really, you know, haven't studied, and they're not open if
Hmm.
that's the case, you
Right,
know. And it's only through ignorance, and it's okay. I mean, if you ask me about it, I'll tell you about it. But I'm sensitive. The same way they have their belief system, I look at it as that's their journey and that's their belief system. I'm not here to change that belief system. There's a lesson for you to learn with that, and I get that. But if you're open and you need my help, I'm more than willing to give it, with
right,
respect.
right,
If they, I think if you stopped a moment and you said, okay, God is a merciful God, and they gave this person an ability, it's a gift for them. If they're not doing anything, negative, then okay.
right. If it's
You
done out
know,
of love, it's done out of compassion, it's done out of delight, it's done out of, service.
yeah. And so I think it's, those things need to be in consideration. And if, they go to church and, they're demonizing people, is that really the right way? In my head anyway.
Right.
Maybe in their head, it's like they're looking for a leader. So, a leader leads with compassion and with love and with education. You don't
Yeah.
want to control, but maybe they do.
Who knows? All right.
Yeah.
So you had a couple mentors who were kind of developing your skills. What happens next?
Um, I worked for a while traditionally in education and higher education. I worked with gifted and talented students. Now, all of this time, they didn't know that about me because I didn't want the parents to block, the messages that I could give through education. So I really didn't tell them about that part. I was on the professional circuit in New York and New Jersey for a little while before I did do higher education. But the minute I started working in higher ed, working with, a K through 12 population, I stopped reading and talked with my guides. And I said, okay, so I have to be of service this way. And I'm not going to just come out and tell them, okay, their Uncle Sue said this, or Aunt John said this, or Uncle John said this, or, their grandpa is here. I said, I can't do any of that. I don't want them not to get their services or their education. traditionally or non-traditionally. I don't want that to happen because, I'm here for a reason and so are they. So they're in front of me. I need to meet them where they are. That's where the traditional meets the non-traditional. I need to meet them where they are and where their families are. And I can't go against what their families may be teaching them at this point in time. I just can say gently nudge them to read and to experience and to grow in the way that's best for them. And so I did that for almost 30 years, if not longer.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, I long time. I met a lot of wonderful students. They were gifted and talented. They're in society now as doctors, lawyers, PhDs, and I'm glad that I met them and we were on the same path. Now I can also tell you we agreed to it before we even got here. We agreed to that.
Right.
So it's really wonderful and it's emotional at times, when you have someone who's in the fourth grade and you see them graduate from college. That's emotional because you
Mhm.
know that you were able to give them some gifts as they pursued their own life's journey and
Yeah,
were able to do that.
you're able to have a positive impact on somebody else's life. It's really fulfilling to see that, I would imagine.
It is. It was, and the first time it happened, I was like, oh goodness, I can't hold back these tears, but oh well, let them roll.
Mhm.
Oh well, let them roll. It's okay. So for 30 years, I worked with, special programs and
So
helping them do that.
so were you doing spiritual work on the side then, or were you just mostly focused on your teaching at that point?
Just definitely on my teaching. I was a little bit fearful that I couldn't do it on the side because it would come out in the
Okay.
and I didn't do that. When I evolved and they use the word retired. When I retired, that's when I went. I said, "Okay, I have to go back on circuit because that was what the agreement was." The minute I left higher ed, I have to go back into overtly being of service, and that's what happened. So um, I left New Jersey. I had a planned retirement to come back to the South, not really back, but just move forward to the South, and joined a spiritual community here, and it's been wonderful. I mean, the things I learned 30 years ago, sometimes they're just now coming to terms with those things. So that's really weird for me because I was like, wait a minute, didn't I do this before? Oh, okay.
It's like riding a bicycle, I would imagine.
Yeah, it was. It's like, okay, so, meditation is the clear way, in my opinion. Prayer is asking God or your higher source is the asking, and meditation is the receiving.
Gotcha.
So, a lot of prayer, like, okay, I'm gonna pray that this transition from you know eating all the wonderful foods to eating all the wonderful foods in the north to eating all the wonderful foods in the south, and that transition is going to be great. And I'll go visit the north when I really want to eat good pizza.
Right.
Yeah. So, it's those kinds of things.
So tell me about your work now. What do you do now, and how long have you been retired?
I've been retired for about 6 years.
Okay.
Um,
Congratulations.
Thank you. Um, yeah, 6 years. I mean, when I say it, I'm like, wow, some of my friends are still working. I keep telling them it's a new life out here. Um,
Mhm.
I do tarot readings. I finished my Reiki training because I started my Reiki training in New Jersey and just everything stood still for a bit. And I finished my Reiki training at the Inner Space in Sandy Springs, Georgia, with Andrea. Um, and I read there once a month, and I enjoy it. They gave me the opportunity to read there to finish my training in that and to read. So I do that. And I'm just very thankful to them for opening up that opportunity. And from there, I met all these wonderful people. And now I also read with Harmony once a month. And that's more than enough because I have my other classes that I take, my painting, my drawing, which I didn't think I could do, but now I can somewhat anyway. Um, so once a month I read for Harmony, which was known as the Blue Barn. People here say call it the Blue Barn, but they used to have a psychic fair weekend at a barn, and it was blue. So that's why, but they've changed it, and now we'll be in Roswell at the Science Center. So I'm really excited about the new place because it's where science meets spirituality when you really think about it. And it's always, that means we're really evolving too when we present it that way. So,
Mhm.
I do the tarot reading. Tarot is fun. I love looking at the pictures. And when I read tarot, I read it intuitively. Like I know the meanings, but it just opens up a door for me to give to the person what they need to hear at the time. Um, and I'm reading energy, yes. And the energy at that time, that's what I'm providing. But you can get a reading and do one different thing and change everything, which is wonderful. Because if I say, okay, I think you need to pull this out of your diet, or would you consider putting more green leafy vegetables in? I don't really like green leafy vegetables. Well, that's not me talking, that's somebody else talking. But look, I'm going to say at least twice a week, add more green vegetables. It is really important for you to do that
Mhm.
for your health. So I know you don't want to be, in a hospital bed, hooked up to tubes, right? No, eat the vegetables. That's just an example, or I think it would be good, if you visited your grandmother and had lunch with her and had a nice talk. Ask her all kinds of questions, write it down or record it. That's going to be important down the road. Well, and sometimes they get it and sometimes they don't get it because we're not allowed to tell you someone is going to cross over.
Gotcha.
That's one of those ethical things. So you have to kind of say things in a way that their heart can receive it and more positive. That's the visit. Go visit. Well, I hadn't planned on visiting until August. Yeah, no.
You should go now. You should go sooner
You
rather
should
than later.
you should go a
I
little
highly
bit
suggest you
sooner
go
than
sooner. Right.
that. I said that's really important. And I said, and she would love to see you.
Mhm.
Or your grandpa would love for you to go with him on the boat and go fishing. Now you might hate fishing, but the point is put the rod in the water and have a nice, quiet talk. you
Right.
know Put something on the grill when you're done and have that glass of wine or that glass of beer. Make them their favorite food. Let them talk about their life. They may talk about, depending upon age, what it was like for them to grow up. Write it down so you do not lose
The
your
memory.
historical and your memories.
Mhm.
And, some of that's the oral tradition, which in some cultures is important. It's passed down orally and not written. So you write it,
Mhm.
record it. I mean, you have a phone, you have a microphone. Just, record
Mhm.
and then transcribe it for later, because when you have children or your nieces and nephews, give them the information so they don't feel so lost and they feel connected.
I do have a question about tarot because as I was raised a Jehovah's Witness. I don't really practice anymore, but I was always raised that tarot card reading was like some sort of demon worship or had to do with divination or something like that. How did you come in to learn about tarot reading, and how do you, I guess, process the what you're doing in terms of reading the cards and that sort of thing?
Well, I don't I everyone starts out with the Rider Waite deck. That's what they teach you. I never looked at it as, demons or anything like that. It's always the person. So I always, say a prayer before. I always pray that only light comes in, only those entities for the highest good are allowed in. I do not want any negative, or I will say only those things of the light, of the white light of God can come in, period. So when I pick up the card, I'm only going to really look at the positive things.
Okay.
So I usually use professionally. Now, back on my journey, I was given the Voyager deck 50 years ago, and they kind of look like this. So
Okay.
that one is the Ace of Wands. Now, the traditional Ace of Wands is, one staff, just one, and that's the ace. Whereas this one has a hand. So I was given this deck and was fortunate enough when I came to Georgia to work with the person who designed this deck.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And when he saw my deck, he said, "You have the original deck." He knew. And that was Dr. Wainless out of Columbia University, who did collages. And it spoke to me more than the traditional deck. So that's how I normally handle it. If I don't really need the deck, I just like it,
Gotcha.
because I can channel without it. But it's going to seem like a conversation like we're having right now.
So could you sort of give me a sample of what I don't know if you want to do a mock reading or do a reading on me or pull a card or two, but I'm curious to know what's out there, what the energies say about, I don't know, me.
Well, that first random card, that Ace of Wands, that would tell me that you're on the journey of business and enterprise and being a creative with that. So that's new. That also lets me know that you're yourself, you're a healer as well, and you're healing through technology and those kinds of things.
Hmm.
Yep. Because your next card was the seer and the high priestess, both of which lets me know that you're on your own spiritual journey, and through your own spiritual journey, you're helping others with that spiritual journey by having people like myself. Very new for you. I mean, you broke away from tradition. You got the learner card, and sometimes you feel like, oh, I'm not doing much, because you got the Eight of Cups, which is stagnation in this deck, and you have no fear about it, which is wonderful, because you got the fear card reversed. Um, and it's a new beginning, and you got the Fool card. That's the new beginning, where you take healthy risks. It's like leaving all the old things and the old traditions behind. While you respect those old traditions, you still, they don't work for you at this time, because you have some other bigger things to do for society and for while we're here on this planet.
Well, thank you very much. That's I say that's pretty accurate.
Yeah. Well,
So
thank you.
so
Thank you
so
for allowing that.
oh, thank you very much. You're welcome. So what do you, as an intuitive, what does that encompass? I guess being intuitive, what does that entail?
Well, everything is energy. So being an intuitive, how's the best I can explain it? Okay, my thing is supermarkets, where it's a lot of crowds of people and you feel all of this thing. Now, you drive into the supermarket and you're going to get your favorite things that you want to have for the weekend. And then you walk into the supermarket and it feels heavy, back to energy, or there's just something not light about it, just heavy. That means you're feeling everyone's energy in that supermarket. And some people are sad, some people are happy. The staff might not be being treated very well, so they have an energy that they're bringing in. Now, mind you, it's the supermarket where we're ingesting food into ourselves. So you don't want that to happen. Now, recently, I go to the same supermarket at the same time because of that. And I like that time, and I like that staff, because they are light and they're fun, and they're loving, and they know me. So if something happens, they're more likely to help me. Now anything can happen at this age. You could slip, you
Mhm.
know, or if I need something and I can't reach it, they're more than happy to help because I'm only 5'5" at this point, and I can't reach to the top. Going through the checkout, um, the cashier was just I just knew. I said, he was complaining, he was upset. I said, "Did you come to work upset?" "No." I said, "Okay, you need to wash your hands," because he had worked with the client and the client was having a hard time. And because he wasn't trained the way I'm trained or the way you're trained, as far as, okay, saying something nice to that person, like, it's a beautiful day today, isn't it? You know, he at first said, "What's wrong with my hands?" I was like, "There's nothing wrong with your hands." I said, "But you're picking up on everyone who's having a hard time right now. I'm in Georgia. There are a lot of layoffs. We have the CDC that, people were just laid off at a moment's notice. There's
Mhm.
a lot of anxiety behind that. One day they're this way, the next day their whole world is turned upside down. And it's disconcerting. And so they bring it into, and then they come to the supermarket where prices are higher. Remember that they can't get the things that they are accustomed to purchasing. So it's a lot of things going on, and you're ringing up the food and you're moving their things along the conveyor belt that they touched, that you're now touched. So that cashier is empathic but doesn't know it.
Mhm.
So I was like, yeah. So when I explained it, he was like, okay, after you, I'm closing down. I need to go wash my hands. I said, and when you wash your hands, kind of wash your face and then ground a bit. I'm working on you a little bit too, because I need you to be open to know that that's what's happening.
Oh,
And he did it, but part of that was, I know the staff, I know their temperament, they're very loving and caring, but he was having a hard time at that moment. And that's why I'm on the planet as well. It's just to help others navigate, those kinds of situations. So that's the daily activities of the mundane.
gotcha. All right, so we're almost out of time, but I do have a few common hot seat questions that I want to ask you.
Okay, go. Let's
Kind of
go.
rapid fire. The first one is, how would you define a spiritual awakening, or how would you explain what a spiritual awakening is to someone?
Um It's when you can explain something. A situation happens and you can explain it. I think, you see things that you don't normally see, or you're the only one that sees it, or you're the only one that feels it. That's an awakening. Like, it's happening to you. You know that we're going to have, as a group, we're going to have a lot of things happen to us in the next 8, 9 months.
Mhm.
So that's how I would explain a spiritual awakening. Like the cashier, he was having an awakening and didn't realize that that's what it was. And
Got
I'll talk more to him about that, but at that time I needed him to stay calm and continue with his day. I may make an appointment with him as a gift and say, let's have something to drink, a glass of iced tea, during your break, and make sure that I help him along the way.
Gotcha.
Well,
All right, the next question is, what's the most important lesson have you learned in life?
oh, to be open and loving, and even if it seems negative, it's a lesson. And to always ask, what is the lesson with this? In my interpersonal relationships, romantically, all of those things that didn't work out, they were a lesson and a gift
Mm,
for
it's great.
me.
Great answer. All right, the last question is, what would be your advice to someone who's going through a spiritual awakening? How would you advise them? What would you tell them? What would be your advice to them?
I would say a spiritual practice in the sense of prayer and meditation the same time each and every day.
Mm,
um, when we open, I said, prayer is asking, meditation is receiving. So that practice is key to um, the awakening and the continuation of what you're going to get. That's what I would say to a person who's, awakening, and to join a spiritual community where you're comfortable.
Good answer. I like that. All right, great. So, how would someone go about contacting you, or is there any sort of product or anything you like to plug, or a website that you like people to visit? How people get in
I,
contact with you?
I need to do a website. I am going to say that, but they can get in touch with me through my email address.
Okay.
And I will provide that to you so that you can post that
I
for
can put
me.
it in the description, definitely.
Yes. And I think that that's good. If they're in the Georgia, if they're in the state of Georgia, specifically in the Atlanta area, I read at Harmony the first weekend of the month. They can go to Facebook and find me there. On Instagram, I also post. I'm the Psychic Knitter on Instagram. So I post when I'm going to do public readings,
Okay.
and the third Sunday of every month, I'm at the inner space. So I read the first and the third at a place, a physical location. And I can read if you don't like that, then I can make arrangements for a private reading for you through
Well,
the email contact.
Veronica, I want to thank you so much for sharing your story with us. Good luck in all your ventures, and thanks for inspiring and helping others.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate that. It's been fun.